Good evening, everybody. Today's topic, Black capitalism versus Black communism. Something that happened to me today, and I was inspired to say, you know what? We probably should talk about this. So, if you don't know who I am, Kamari Ellis, the Finance Rebel. Welcome to the Finance Rebel Show. You know, every Wednesday we do this, our special show, right? I'm here live every week talking about money, stocks, taxes, bonds, Black wealth, economics, business. If it has to do with money in the Black community, we talk about it. I mean, the whole vibe here is to make wealth Black again. So that's what we're talking about tonight, and that's what we're working on now. In my haste today, I didn't share this out with anybody. So give me 2 seconds and I will share this out. But as we are doing this, again, this is the Finance Rebel Show. We are live here every week, 8:30 on the YouTube channel. So let's see here. Ooh. I'm going to share this out with a few peoples in a few places, and then we will proceed on with the show. I'm running a little bit behind today because I had some tech issues, but I'm here. I am here. So as everybody comes in and gets warmed up, make sure you tell me who you are. Let me know your name. Let me know where you're coming from, where you're hailing from, and we're going to get busy with this. All right. So just give me 1 second. And I actually shared this out in a lot of places, but forgot to share it out in the main places. So give me 1 second. 1 second. Now it's funny. I have talked about Black capitalism, Black socialism, Black communism, and how it all goes down, what my thoughts are based off of my education and my research. And I said, I've talked about this already, but then I looked, I didn't talk about it on my YouTube at all. So I definitely wanted to talk about this today because something happened today that was kind of interesting, not in a bad way, but kind of interesting because I always run up into these brick walls when it comes to capitalism. Listen, y'all all know I'm pro-Black wealth. I am I'm a Black capitalist, right? Let's put it out there. I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm not going to have you guys thinking about it, but I really want to go through it, right? Because a lot of times, a lot of people poo-poo capitalism or say the Black capitalists can't save the Black community. And I always find that interesting. So I wanted to talk about it and bring some resources and some talking points and some things like that. But again, I'm Kamari Ellis, the Finance Rebel Show. We're talking about Black capitalism versus Black communism. Which one is the best for the Black community overall? All right. So still rocking is in the building. Appreciate you here. But let me just lay this out for you. So I had like a little, wasn't even a bad situation. It just made me think. So there is Instagram and YouTube creator. He's a creator, Black educator who I love. I think he's dope. Super brilliant Black man who does a lot of things and does a lot of content. And he made this post today about how Black capitalists can't save us. So I want to review that, but then I also want to go through the points of capitalism versus the points of communism and which one works best, or which ones I think works best, which ones you think works best for the Black community as a whole. So, I always love to have it be interactive, have my shows be interactive. So tell me what your thoughts are as we going along, right? So I want to start out with a video. I want to watch it once, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to break it down for what I see it as and what I don't see it as. All right. So take a pen, get a pencil, get a pad, and let's jump into it.
You know, it's interesting how many of us do not have a problem whatsoever holding white individuals accountable as beneficiaries of systemic white supremacy. We do not allow their personal goodness to absolve them from their collective white privilege, and we scoff at their whataboutisms to avoid personal accountability. Yet, when a critique is levied at the billionaire class, some of us ironically resort to that very same rhetoric in defense of black billionaires and the black super rich. Make that make sense? You see, too many of us have been conditioned to believe that capitalism is the antidote to racism.
That's revenge is your paper.
Nothing could be further from the truth. No matter how we personally feel about black billionaires or the black super rich and relate to the black bourgeoisie, they too have to be held accountable. Because contrary to what we've been conditioned to believe, capitalism is not the antidote to systemic racism. It is the active ingredient. We out here.
All right, so there's a lot of things that went on in that clip. Again, one of my favorite, there's a couple, but one of my most favorite content creators, right, out here in these social medias, because everything he puts out here is positive. It makes you think. And you know what I say, we need more positivity, more love, and more thinking, right? So his page, his stuff is all about that. I believe he's also, and his name is Sun Michaud. I hope I got his name right. But he's a Harvard professor or some kind of professor. I know he's a professor somewhere, and I believe it is Harvard. So, you know, brother's sharp, real sharp. So, you know, I got the critique, but I want to run it back again because there are some points in here that I think are really important as it relates to the black community, how we view wealth, how we view money, how we view resources. Excuse me, y'all. I'm a little excited. So, you know, I want to talk about those things. So let's run this back again from the top. Oops. All right, so here we go.
Peace. You know, it's interesting how many of us do not have a problem whatsoever holding white individuals accountable as beneficiaries of systemic white supremacy. We do not allow their personal goodness to absolve them from their collective white privilege, and we scoff at their whataboutisms to avoid personal accountability. Yet, when a critique is levied at the billionaire class, some of us ironically resort to that very same rhetoric in defense of black billionaires and the black super rich.
So I don't think that's a fair comparison, right? So we're talking about white folks who've been privy to generations and centuries of white privilege, white supremacy. Not the same for black folks, not the same for black billionaires. The things that Jay-Z and Oprah and Byron Allen have all gone through are not the same thing as your typical white folks who are just flaunting their entitlement and privilege all over the place. So I think that's not fair for the most part.
Make that make sense. You see, too many of us have been conditioned to believe that capitalism is the antidote to racism.
That's
Capitalism is not the antidote to racism. I want to make that very clear right now. All right, I'm going to put that out there right now.
revenge is your paper.
Nothing could be further from the truth. No matter how we personally feel about black billionaires or the black super rich and relate to the black bourgeoisie, they too have to be held accountable. Because
sure, they need to be held accountable, but at what lengths and how are we viewing accountable, right? So I'm really interested in that because what I often see is not necessarily accountability, but more or less entitlement. But we'll get back to that.
contrary to what we've been conditioned to believe, capitalism is not the antidote to systemic racism. It is the active ingredient.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that. So, I think a lot of people confuse what capitalism is, what communism is. And the reason why I titled this Black Capitalism versus Black Communism, because I made a comment in his post. Because again, he's one of my favorite people. If you were to go through his post, they're all fire emojis, black fist emojis, that's what's up emojis. Like, I'm a fan. I'm kind of a fanboy of the guy, if you want to use young people's language, or the stand of the guy. I really admire his work. And so I meant to pull this up earlier so we could go through his post. But I will share it on the screen on my IG. Let me pull up my IG. Give me 1 second so we can look at what we say. It's all transparency here, right? So I'm going to put it out there. There's some more commentary. Now I'm going to say this. This dialogue with his folks, I will say this, is probably the best dialogue I've ever had on social media, outside of some of my dialogue with some of my friends and people I personally know. There was no attacks, nothing like that. His audience was superb. They let me know they didn't agree with what I was saying, but they also said, hey, they did it in a respectful way. And I believe as Black folks, we need more productive dialogue, right? Not just talking about materialistic things and the nonsense of what's going on and all the violence that's going on and everything else. Like real productive, like how can we stimulate our mind to then take action on some positive, constructive things? So I thought it was really good. And if you are just now joining us, right? If you're just not joining us, you're watching the Finance Rebel Show. Today is a Wealthy Wednesdays. Our topic today is which one is better? Black capitalism versus Black communism, right? So I'm going to put this out I'm going to share his IG, and I want to show some of the comments that we had. And they were all, if you guessed, they were all anti-capitalism, all of them, down to a T. Now, there's a couple others that, let's see if I can find this here. There's a couple more on here that I don't see, or that I didn't see before I did this post. All right, so what I said was, that's me, the Finance Rebel. Let me make sure y'all can see that. Let me blow that up. Let me blow it up a little bit. Oops, wrong thing. Blowing up the wrong thing, y'all. Let's see here. Let me make sure that's good. All right, so I believe you all can see that. So let me know if y'all can see that. Just put in the chat, you can see it. So what I said was, and I'm the Finance Rebel, so love your work. This is the first time, by the way, my autocorrect and some of my grammar online makes me look like I'm a bumbling idiot some days. And today is one of them. But I think everybody got the context, right? So I said, so I love your work. This is the first time I've ever disagreed with you. Capitalism is not the antidote to racism, true. But if Black folks want to defend themselves from racists, it is in our best interest to be capitalists and work for the benefit of our community. And if you've been rocking with me for a while, I say the same thing all the time. And I'm kind of laid out why. And I don't understand why a lot of people don't get this, right? So here we have Black Unity Matters. This is a page. He says the person he's responding to is somebody that responded to my comment. Let's go to his comment first. All right. So Bomb Poppy, I believe it is. So he says, capitalism requires poor, homeless, incarcerated, and oppressed people to keep the machine going. You don't believe that in America that will always be minorities and poor people. Your answer is to become a rich oppressor yourself. By the way, you can have Oprah's money. White supremacy capitalism still won't let you in the club. You cannot fix it from the inside. Being rich within capitalism doesn't fix capitalism. 60 likes. People love it. That's his audience, right? I get it. All right. And then this other person, I believe it's a sister, but I don't know. I could never tell behind the names, and I don't want to give somebody the improper pronoun these days, right? But it says that freaking Brenda Reads, all right? Finance Rebel, what you're describing isn't capitalism. It's closer to communism. It's in the name. Excuse me, y'all. It's in the name. Only works if they are working poor, sick, hungry class. I don't think you'd exploit your own people. All right. And so, okay, New Leaf Medium says, responding to the other person, that's incorrect. Communism is not what you hear described in the news in countries like China. What capitalism does is teach you to fear the name communism, so you don't do the work to understand what it truly is and should be. There's a reason the government spends decades disrupting governments that are attempting to divest from capitalism. It's because they don't want there to be a successful communist state, as it will show the people here in the US that there's a way to live that doesn't require you to exploit people. I recommend following accounts. So there's a couple of other accounts basically saying they don't like capitalism. A couple thanks, saying thanks for the insight on the new follow. And then, they go ahead and they describe other things that they don't like, right? I'm trying to find some of the other ones. So this is all of my thread in response to me. Now, Son did pin my comment. So that's why we got a lot of it. And I'm guessing I was probably the only person to maybe challenge or put in something different than what everybody else was putting in. So I want to go to, all right, so then some other people made some other comments towards other people, but they were actually from me. So then this is my response to Bomb Poppy, right? So my comment is not about nationality. It's not about nationality. However, you see every ism, capitalism, socialism, communism, have varying tiers of social economic levels or caste in them, right? All of them. We have poor communists, we have poor capitalist countries that you can go read about. Cuba, you can go read about China, and other countries. You can look at some of the countries in South America. And this is actually, in my opinion, above nationality. For the record, nationality is a white supremacist construct in the way we look at it now. But I'm going to keep going back through it. You see poor in Russia and Cuba, as well as the United States, and you also see extreme wealth in these countries as well. By the way, if this is if this is communism in Russia, why is there extreme wealth? Also, the United States is not purely a capitalist country. Y'all have heard me say that many times before. If it were, things would look different. Also, I never said I wanted to be an oppressor. You can be financially secure without being an oppressor, right? So we already have these misconceptions of what capitalism is and what it is not. In my opinion, the issue is who has the power, not about the so-called title of the economic system of a particular country. The problems we are seeing is good versus evil. It's people, right? And my man Corey always says, Corey over by the hood says, people are going to people. Evil people creating all the problems, right? And then there's another comment I had, right? So I responding back to freaking Brenda Reed. I said, I disagree. Every system has rich, a middle class, and poor. So you could say communism only works if there's rich and poor, right? Same thing they argue about capitalism. And you are correct. I would never exploit anyone. So I did appreciate for that, right? So not sure where to start. And I'm responding back to New Leaps. But I will say this. Media propaganda is real. U.S. and China both have puppeted media organizations in both countries that spread rhetoric that benefits the country. And yes, I agree, you do not have to exploit people, but all systems have people that exploit people, right? I will check the accounts out because they recommended me some other accounts, and I told them to check out my account as well. So that's kind of what I was saying with all of that, right? So again, mad love for Son. Like that's actually his name, right? So I'm not trying to son him. Mad love to him for this dialogue. Mad love for him for spreading this stuff. Somebody's asked me, and I'm going to come back to this, but yes, nationality as we have it right now is definitely a white supremacist construct. And I'm not just hotep, right? I'll prove to you how it is as we get further along into it. So let's get back into this. So we got a lot of people in the building, okay? So, well, Empress Signs, we are on the same page a lot of times, but we definitely disagree a lot of times, right? So again, going back into all this, right? So just having this dialogue, it's like I don't think people truly understand what capitalism is. Now, yes, words do change. They grow and morph over times. But let's look at what the actual definition of capitalism is. All right. So I took some notes. All right. So capitalism, talking about capitalism, communism are two different economic systems that have been developed and implemented by countries around the world. While there are different interpretations and variations of each system, the basic differences between them can be summarized as follows. Capitalism. In a capitalistic system, that means the means of production, such as factories, land, and machinery, are owned and controlled by private industries or corporations. Private ownership. The distribution of goods and services is determined by market forces, supply and demand, and prices are set by free interaction of buyers and sellers in the marketplace. The goal of capitalism is to create profits for those who own and operate businesses and to incentivize innovation and competition amongst producers. All right. Communism. In a communistic system, and some will also say there's no such thing as a communistic system, it's just socialism. Right. But in this communist system, the means of production are owned and controlled by the state or by the community as a whole. The distribution of goods and services is determined by central planning, with the state allocating resources according to its assessment of society's needs. The goal of communism is to create a classless society in which wealth and power are shared equally among all members of the community. While both systems have their pros and cons, capitalism is generally associated with greater individual freedom and economic growth, while communism is associated with greater social equality and less inequality. However, each system has also been criticized for its potential drawbacks, such as the potential for exploitation and inequality in capitalism, or lack of incentives for innovation and efficiency in communism. It is important to note that there is no purely capitalist or communist societies in the world today. Most countries have mixed economies that incorporate elements of both systems. You can see that in the United States, you can see that in China, you can see it in Russia, you can see it in Cuba. And different countries have different degrees of government intervention in their economies. But those who tend to lean towards communism or socialism tend to have a chokehold on a lot of things. And what happens is a lot of times black markets arise. Black market isn't just a thing for, black market isn't just a thing for the United States, right? It happens all over the world. When people have needs, when people want things, they figure out ways to get them across the world, period. If you look at Cuba, right? So if you go back into the history of Cuba, Cuba was once very much dominated by capitalist concerns who were the island of Cuba was being exploited. There's a lot of history around this. And then Fidel came into power. The man in charge before him was Batista, right? And so Batista allowed the casinos and the resorts to come in and play, and allegedly, well, not allegedly, it was proven, the mob was involved and they exploited a lot of things, right? So some of those things in The Godfather really are true. Castro gets in power along with him and Che Guevara. They kick Batista out, and anybody that was associated with him, and then they had their own revolution. A lot of things happen. From what I read about Castro many, many years ago, his plan was not to become a communist society. His plan was to be capitalist. However, they butted heads with the United States. Why? Because some of the interest of oil, some of the interest of sugar corporations, that is, some of the interest of the casinos wanted to come back and get their money because they got kicked out. Castro nationalized all those businesses. And then you start hearing anti-Castro rhetoric, right? Now, this is a full rundown, y'all. And I can't go into everything, but just from my lens, right? Castro then is in power. After the Bay of Pigs, Castro then teams up with Russia. Russia backs Cuba, gives them funds, gives them money, gives them resources. A lot of Cubans would actually go to school in Russia. There's a big There's a big connection there between Cuba and Russia. Look up the Cuban Missile Crisis. I believe it was in like 62 or 63, right? Bay of Pigs happen. I said that right. Bay of Pigs happens, right? So all of this interest against the United States didn't work, right? And in terms of that dynamic right there, it didn't work. And so they moved to communism. Now, Cuba has a lot of good things going for it. Has the highest per capita of doctors in the world. Does a lot of humanitarian work, especially like with Haitians. Remember, this show is about Black folks, right? So when we look at Cuba and how they've helped the Haitians, how they've helped South Africa, how they've helped many African states, they've done a lot of good things. And so you can say there, to a certain degree, it makes a case for communism. However, there's a lot of people who are not happy under the Castro regime, and now Castro's passed, and I believe his brother's in charge at this point, right? There is black markets there. They don't like the rations that are being served out of their food. They have to go do other illegal things to make more money, to make life more livable, right? Black market. They don't have the same freedom to create a capitalistic society. And this isn't a critique on them, right? I don't really feel I have the right to critique them. Every people has to do what's right for them. And I'm not there, right? And also, I will say this. I had to write a paper on this years ago when I was in college. In order to get any real research, I had to look at international news sources. Couldn't look at anything U.S. because all of it was anti-Castro. All of it. So, again, when you look at that, you see what's going on. Fast forward today, there's a lot of problems there. There's a lot of revolutions there. There's a lot of protests there, rather. When you look over in China, a lot of issues in China. Now, China before was fully communist. Now they've adopted more of a communist / capitalist economic infrastructure. But people still don't have control. People still are doing a lot of underground things, just like anywhere else, though, right? So again, this isn't an indictment on them or to judge them or belittle them. I'm just saying that people are people. And when you have the state basically controlling what's going on, there's a lot more tension. And yes, you could say the United States in a lot of ways controls a lot of things, right? Especially media. So, you want to keep all those things in mind. Even Russia, right? When we talk about Russia, when the wall fell in the 80s, I want to say it was, communism kind of fell by the wayside. Then now you have all these oligarchs. Still got communism, but now you got all these oligarchs. So you have a disparity there of rich and poor. Disparity in China, rich and poor. Disparity in Cuba, rich and poor. Whether the state is creating them or they've got lucky somehow, had state-esque connections, right? So again, there's this disparity. So when you look at communism, when you look at capitalism, there's disparities all over the place. So what I say, and y'all have heard me say this a lot. What's best for the community? What's best for the community? And I don't know if people even think about this, right? I think they think about what will make everybody feel good, not what's best. There's a difference. There is a difference. Now, I want to play this other clip. It's a bit long. Just ask you to bear with me, but there's a lot of stuff by Dr. Amos Wilson. I'm a big fanboy of Dr. Amos Wilson. Don't agree with everything, but a lot of stuff makes sense. So I want to share this. And I want to get your point again. If you're just joining here, this is the Finance Rebel Show. The show is all about Black folks and money and how Black folks how we can make wealth Black again. All right. So I want to show this other clip again. This is a little bit long. I'm not going to play this one the whole way through because we'll be here all night. So I'm going to play it and stop as we go along.
And so forth, advertising that uses our music and all these things. How many thousands of jobs are we creating as people? We're creating them, but they have them. You see? We sing the music, they sell it. We sing the music, they market it. We sing the music, they promote it. You see? We sing the music, they produce great conglomerates like Sony, CBS Music, creating all kinds of jobs. We're creating tremendous jobs for a lot of people. How many jobs do we create just buying from Koreans?
And so before I go any further this, there was something I left out that I wanted to say before I go any further into this, right? Anytime black folks, no, forget black folks, anytime people in general have to give control to the state, the government, it usually never ends well. And particularly for black folks, it's especially dangerous because we've seen it. We see what happened to black people all around the globe. Black people are not just synonymous to the United States, y'all. We are people all around the globe. And all around the globe, governments have treated black people poorly. So a lot of times when we start talking about capitalism versus communism, the idea of giving the state total control over allocating food and resources and education scares me. To be totally honest, scares the bejesus out of me. But let's get back to this.
Buying from other ethnic groups out here. How many people are we creating employment for in terms of our spending habits as a people and our consumption habits as a people? How many jobs are we creating going to jail? We're creating all kinds of jobs and wealth. And we must come to understand this. We are creating these jobs, and yet we are begging for jobs.
Now, we make the stuff, right? We don't have jobs. We're begging for it. We don't have wealth. By the way, part of my rationale in thinking about this is every people that became empowered had money. I always say it takes revenue to fund a revolution. It takes revenue to fund a revolution. If you don't have no revenue, you're not funding the revolution. Whether it's the United States with the Revolutionary War versus the Brits, whether it's Haiti versus France, they got out from Ireland. I just recently found that out, right? You can look at various situations and wars where there was strife, and usually the opposing side that wins got help from somebody, right? So I want y'all to keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
This means that in somewhere our consciousness has been impaired. We are begging for what we are making our.
So we're saying our consciousness has been impaired because we're not seeking to become an independent people, right? We are relying on everyone else except ourselves.
Ready. We cannot use our own creations as a source of our own wealth. I told you earlier today that the Creator could not have intended for us as African people to be a poor people if the Creator implanted in our soils all the wealth that was planted there. We talk about the minerals and the oil and the gold and the this and the that that's implanted in African soil. So it seems as if the Creator blessed us from the very beginning.
So again, when we go back to communism versus capitalism, I'm thinking about it from a black lens, black freedom lens, right? Not just getting money to get a chain or a car or a big old house. There was another clip I wanted to show with Dr. Anderson where he talked about a lot of rich black folks are selfish because all they're doing is thinking about is getting a big old house with a bunch of rooms and not necessarily thinking about the books that our children need, the medicine that our infirm need, things like that. They're not thinking about the wholeness of the community, at least not all of them, at least not on the surface, right? And I said in the beginning, I don't necessarily think it's the responsibility of rich Black folks to take care of all Black people, but we can definitely talk about that in a little bit. But let's get back to this.
With wealth and possibility. Therefore, for us to be going hungry over this wealth and to be starving in the midst of it and to be perceived as a dependent, indebted people while our wealth is being shipped out to other people, we're actually selling a lot of it for pennies and nickels and dimes and less.
And we can see that in hip hop. We can see that in jazz. We can see that in rock and roll. All of those great creations that Black people created all got ripped off. So we can see this, right? All the fashion trends that came out of all those eras, we got money off them.
Means that there is something wrong with our consciousness. Because ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, we've said what? That the wealth of a people is ultimately not in their land. But where is it? In the mind.
So I got to stop that. I don't think a lot of people, I mean, this clip has been surfacing and rolling around forever, right? I don't think a lot of people get that, right? The wealth of the people is not in the land, not necessarily in the resources. We can see what's going on the continent in Africa, where a lot of our brothers and sisters or cousins, however you want to see them, I see them as brothers and sisters for the record, but however you want to see them, they're not getting to that wealth. They're not getting to that wealth. If any of y'all have noticed, on at least on my IG, I'll share pictures and stories about what's going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo and where they do a lot of mining for the cobalt. And there's another mineral that goes into our phone, and they're digging all these mines, but none of them are getting the money, right? So Black people are being exploited across the globe, not just in the United States, across the globe. By who, right? I mean, you know, for me, to me, it's clear. But again, I want to go through this.
The wealth of man is in his mind, in his consciousness. You got to look at it.
Got to give the orange again, right? The wealth of man is in his mind and his consciousness, right? Now, I talk a lot about the Jews. People get mad at me sometimes because they think I'm a Jew fanboy, and that's cool. But I believe you can learn things from other people and other situations. We don't have to go through everything, right? And no, their experience is not the same as Black people or African people around the globe. They're not the same. However, they were outcast for a very, very long time. And what didn't they lose? Their culture, their mind, even under all the oppression. If you go back and you look at the real history of Palestine and how Palestine was taken over, that didn't just happen in 1944 or 1948. I think it was 1948, right? Jewish people, and I'm not going to get into the whole who's Jewish and who's not. We're going to talk about the people who are recognized as Jewish people today. They started moving there in the late 1800s or 1900s, right? Like 1880. So they were already making their move decades and decades before they even got that land. And they didn't move in mass. They didn't move in mass. Family here, family there. They started to settle. So again, what was their mindset to say, oh, we're going to go back and get this land little by little? Got to start asking yourself questions like that. And I'm not even getting into the right or wrong thing. I think what's happening in Palestine is a travesty. But when you look at the strategy and everything that went behind it, it's like, that's interesting. How were they thinking during that time? What were they thinking? So let's get back to it.
And we mentioned the example of Japan. No mineral wealth to speak of whatsoever. Nothing at all. A nation, by the way, which is totally dependent. Of course, we get things backwards, don't we? We see ourselves as depending on Europeans when the reality is the other way around. when they depend on us and our soils and our people. We have to be backwards in order for this situation to be the way.
How many of us really do feel that we're dependent on anybody but the black community? Whether it's Europeans, whether it's Asians, whether it's Koreans or Chinese, how many other people do y'all know that feel like they don't have to just rely on their own community, their own people? They feel that everybody else has got the answer. Everybody else can do things, but not us. Why is that? I mean, I believe everybody in the chat knows why, understands why, but why is that? Why do we keep going that same route? Now, black folks have gotten the voting rights in 65 or 64, and then we got civil rights in 65 or 64. I always get the years confused. So we're about 50 years out, right? That's still infantile, right? That's still juvenile to a certain degree. We're still kind of in toddler phase. But at this point, we should start thinking outside the box of what's been spoon-fed to us and say, you know what? I need a different diet. I don't want this baby food anymore. Am I still a baby? Can I walk on my own? Can I talk? Can I think for myself? Or are we just going to keep going along and get along? And there was another clip I wanted to get, and maybe I'll try to get it before the time's out, with the great ancestor. I'm losing his name right now, from Chicago, who talked about socialism, who thought it was the answer. Chairman Fred, excuse me, y'all. Chairman Fred, right? Fred Hampton talked a lot about socialism, and many of us have kind of stayed on that same wavelength, but not really looked at it and saying, you know what, on the surface, communism could be dope. But what's the practicality of it? But we'll get into it. We'll definitely get into it.
It is. Our reality has to be turned backwards, and we have to live in an almost permanent state of deception in order to be used the way we are used. The Japanese must depend on others for their vital resources, their oil, their timber, all of these things that they use to create their technology and so forth is taken from the soils of other people and then sold back to them.
So how did those people who got beat down, a damn bomb dropped on them in World War II, able to kind of run the world, at least economically, and have the U.S. have their back? How did that happen? Because clearly they don't have a lot of resources. Their brains, their minds, they figured out how to work the system. Maybe, just maybe, we need to think about it. They're capitalists, right? I don't know.
And yet they are seen as rich and powerful. And the people whose wealth they take or buy are seen as poor and poverty-stricken. Ultimately, then, you cannot rob or take from wealth from a what? Poor people. You cannot get wealth from a poverty-stricken people who have nothing you can get nothing from. So if you're getting all your diamonds and your gold and your magnesium and all this other stuff, then from African people, then African people must be what? Wealthy and rich. And therefore, if African people...
I don't know. Did y'all get that? Did y'all catch that? All right. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. So I want to review this, right? So here is another piece that, again, capitalism versus communism. Capitalism and communism are two opposing economic systems that have different philosophies and principles. Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and distribution of goods and services. In a capitalistic system, individuals and businesses operate for profit and engage in voluntary trade. So if they have voluntary trade, can't everything else be voluntary? Or do they just have to be, quote unquote, profiteers and money mongers who do all evil? Is that what it is, or is that what they say it is? How would we want it to be? All right. The pricing of goods and services is determined by supply and demand, and the market is regulated by competition. Capitalism emphasizes individual freedom, property rights, and the pursuit of self-interest. Communism, on the other hand, is an economic system based on the collective ownership of the means of production and distribution. So the state owns the means of production. So if the state owns the means of production, who determines jobs? Who does the investments? Who does all that? Has it been done well before? These are all questions. I don't have any answers. All right. In a communist system, there is no private ownership. So basically it's an exaggeration to be out there, but you have a house, you live in a house. If your neighbor's house down the street catches on fire and their little boy is a pedophile and you have a little girl, they can come move in your place until they get a new one. How would you feel about that? Point is, you don't have any control over that situation because you don't have any ownership. How do you defend that? It's the state's, it's not yours. Not to be confused with abuse, y'all. Just the fundamentals of how the system works. Again, it works differently in different places, but how is it going to work when they're good things? All right, let me keep going through with this, right? And the state or the community owns all resources. The production and distribution of goods and services are controlled by the government or central planning authority. Communism emphasizes social equality, common ownership, and the elimination of class distinctions. Well, if there's no class distinctions, why are there poor people in Cuba? Why are there poor people in Russia? Why are there poor people in China? I'm not shitting on the poor, y'all. I'm just saying, if we're going to act like this thing is the utopia, we got to look at it from all different angles, all different ways. One of the main differences between capitalism and communism is the role of the state. Again, this is just going over it again. In capitalism, the state's role is minimal, and the market determines the allocation. Now, we know that's not necessarily true either, right? We know the banks just had a big kerfuffle, right? They just jacked some things up. Who's helping them? The state. Is it minimum? We could probably debate that. Is it less than others? Yes. I don't know if I would say minimum now, especially with so many other things that are going on. All right, another difference in the motivation of economic activity, capitalism is motivated by profit, and individuals and businesses compete to maximize their profits. In communism, the motivation is to meet the needs of society as a whole, rather than individual. Now, I will say this, I do believe the group plays an important part, probably the most important part, but I would be remiss if I said the individuals don't play an important part too. My mentor would say to me that you can't have strong groups without strong individuals. And you can't have strong individuals without strong groups. It's one endless circle, right? Goes round and round. Like if any of y'all remember The Lion King, Mufasa, remember the circle of life, right? All these things come into play. They're all nuanced, right? There a lot of details go into this stuff. And we just all the time just throw blanket statements at a lot of this stuff. So you got to think about this. Again, I'm talking about this from a perspective of what is best for the Black community. If we look at it, capitalism or communism. So far, which ones do y'all think? Throw it in the chat. All right, so capitalism is all right, I read that already. And communism, the motivation is to meet the ends of society as a whole rather than the individual gain. Overall, capitalism and communism are two fundamentally different economic systems with contrasting principles and approaches to resource allocation, property rights, and the role of the state. Each has its strengths and weaknesses, and their effectiveness depends on the specific circumstances and conditions in which they are implemented. All right, so what do y'all think is best for the Black community, right? Is it communism? Is it capitalism? Is it a hybrid? I want to hear what y'all think. What are y'all thinking? All right. So back to the good doctor.
People are poverty stricken with this material wealth, then it must be because our consciousness as a people is impoverished. And we are suffering then an impoverishment of our mentality. As we said before, if you have a good mind, you can con another joker out of his land. You can con him out of his diamond and his gold. And this is what the other people have done. They have used their mind and their cleverness and taken from us what they did not have originally. And therefore, consciousness is not an abstract concept. It is not a theoretical concept. It is a concept that is directly related to the reality that one lives in and to the reality that one experiences. It is directly related to the type of life that one will live and does live. So I'm going to look at this for a minute.
I mean, so what do y'all think about this? Are y'all bored by this? I mean, for me, this gym right here is everything, right? And so if we're going to talk about this subject, I feel like we got to pull from a lot of different things. And I feel like a lot of times when we're having this conversation, it's just what I think, what I feel. All right, well, let's pull in what some other people think and feel. All right. What if some of the elders and some of the ancestors already who've done all the research on this or thought through a lot of this? How do we leverage some of that? That's a form of communism, right? That's a form of collectivism, right? All right, let's get back to it, y'all.
Particularly the consciousness of Africans in America. I'm often somewhat amused and taken aback by the number of people in this society who claim that slavery occurred somewhere back there. And you got some so-called black conservatives who claim that slavery no longer influences the nature of African people. I wonder what those people have to conserve in the first place.
But what he just said, slavery. Some black conservatives don't think slavery has any impact on us. Going from the beginning to coming here, and yes, for some of our brothers and sisters who claim indigenous, right? There were definitely African people on the shores of the Americas and the United States a long time ago, but a large majority of us came from Africa, right? Robbed of our name, robbed of our language, lost our religion, our God. Some of us even lost our mind, right? That's real. It's very well documented. The atrocity, or what they call the Ma'afa, has definitely occurred and definitely changed things. So much so that I want to say it's Dr. DeGroot, Joy DeGroot said that we have post-traumatic slavery disorder. I might be getting it kind of wrong, but right. We're seeing these things when we got out of slavery. We never got therapy. Therapy wasn't a thing. We wasn't able to go back to our spiritual roots. So we were still disconnected from that. So where was the healing so we could move forward and be a whole people? It's kind of rough. Not to mention all the other stuff, the redlining, the crack, Jim Crow, all of that. So I think the good doctor has a point.
Are they conserving power? They're conserving wealth? What does a black conservative conserve? You know, you have to conserve something. And since they have very little, if anything, they must only be conserving the system that has created their poverty to begin with.
Yo, I don't know if y'all down with Dr. Amos, but he's a G. Go read, his book is The Black Power Blueprint. The Black Power Blueprint. It's great. It's awesome. Check that out.
And you see them ultimately justifying the poverty of African people and justifying the political and social and economic subordination of African people in the name of some kind of higher principles. So slavery is not supposed, the experience of slavery is not supposed to be operating in the mentality of black folk. And you hear a lot of our youngsters will say that as well. How do you talk about slavery? That was back there. Or you know, whites talk about that. Well, you know, that was back there.
Part of that happens, though, because we're not doing our jobs to our children. We're not teaching them their history. However, when you look at the Jews and how they take over, what do they always have? Their history. Never going to let you forget about the Holocaust. Never going to let you forget about how they were treated in Europe. Never going to let you forget about all the other things. And when you look at what they did, if you look at a company like a Goldman Sachs, right, on Wall Street, how many billions of dollars they controlled and how they figured out how to infiltrate the system. You know, wasn't nobody rocking with Jews in the 1920s. It wasn't that long ago. Hollywood, created by who? Wasn't that long ago. So they created a whole industry to serve themselves. There's something to this, y'all. This mind thing, this thought thing, this conscious thing. There's something to it.
We don't have anything to do with that anymore. You see. And it's an amazing situation because you have to remind them that you're still living off the interest of the wealth that your forefathers earned from slavery. You're still enjoying the accumulated wealth that began with the enslavement of our people. And if you're going to enjoy the wealth that was generated by evil, then you must take the curse that comes along with it. And therefore, even though you personally had nothing to do with it, but because you have received stolen goods, you must pay the price as well. And because you fight and struggle to protect those stolen goods, and you defend them, and you organize your society and your relationship to my people to maintain them and to continue to enhance them, then you must pay the price. That's why you live in terror. That's why you're stabbed in these streets. That's why you're going to suffer, no matter how good you are, no matter how liberal you are. Ladies and gentlemen, when we behave as adults, we must recognize that our behavior will be visited upon our children.
The sins of a father are those of his son. That's biblical. Not trying to get religious on y'all, but that's from the book.
And that our children pay for our misbehavior.
So again, our children pay for our misbehavior. So what are our children going to pay for once we are gone? Or even while we're here? Or our children's children? Or our children's children's children? What are they going to pay? What's the cost going to be?
As we say, an act does not end at the point of its occurrence. It continues to reverberate into the future and down across the generations. And that's why when you behave in a particular way, you have to think in terms of 7 generations from your behavior as to how what you're going to do is going to affect those generations later on. And even though those children may appear.
Now, again, Dr. Amos Wilson, Black Power Blueprint, everybody should check it out. It's even in lecture form. I've watched that, right? But I wanted to show that, and it was a little long, and thank you all for bearing with me. I hope you got some value from that. But I wanted to show that, and I was like, how can I cut this up? And I couldn't, because it's just too many points. He just was hammering that nail over and over and over again. But the sins that we commit now, the way we're thinking now or not thinking now is going to impact our children. And you're probably saying, well, Kamari, how does that relate to capitalism or communism? Well, I'll say this, right? Neither of the isms matter. Neither matter. Now, yeah, in theory, I would say I'm a black capitalist. I have no problem with it because I want to make money and I want to take that money and put it to use in my community and for my family. If I get a little bit of it, great. But if we are, right, so of the mind that communism is the way to go, how is that going to set up our community? Now, we've already talked about you need revenue and you need money for revolutions. Everybody's talking about a revolution. Where the hell is the money at, folks? Where's the money? How are we going to fund it? How are we going to pay for our sick and shut in? How are we going to take care of our kids? Because we still have kids to take care of all the while. We still have, excuse me. We still have elderly to take care of, right? How are we going to train these people to fight? Or to do anything, right? To cook, to farm, to do any of these things you need to sustain yourself to be sustainable. If you haven't noticed, things are getting bad out here. Time to tighten up, folks. Time to tighten up. But whether you call yourself a capitalist, whether you call yourself a communist, whatever, you need to be in the business of making some money to take care of your family, to make sure they don't have to necessarily live in a harmful place, harmful area. If you're waiting for the state to take care of you, historically, we know that always fails because there's always some dickhead who gets in power because all the nice people are saying, no, we just want to be kumbaya. We just want to be nice. We just want to get along. And I have that in me too, y'all. But at the end of the day, checks and balances will say, you need somebody to make sure that that asshole or those assholes don't get in power. What are you going to do? Are you doing everything you can do to make sure that your interests are at least represented? Are you voting? Are you learning how to farm? Are you learning how to cook, sew, clean, first aid? A lot of things a lot of folks are not thinking about, right? So we're talking about the community and which way we want to go. I would love to hear what y'all going to say when we don't have any money to be made to feed our family. What are we going to do? Are we going to beg? Because there's always been money. Whether it's cowrie shell, whether it's sand, whether it's gold pieces, whatever. There's always been some kind of form of commerce. I would say capitalism actually started with black people. What happened when you took young sister goes to the marketplace with her yams and her cola nut and her turnip greens and maybe some of her chicken, and she went to the marketplace to sell them? Did she barter? Maybe. Does she have money? Yeah. So again, capitalism is about private ownership. They had their farms. They had their stands at the market. They had all these other things that I know I'm mixing matching a little bit in terms of human evolution and all of that. But the point is they had their own stuff and government wasn't involved. And if you want to call it mercantilism, that's cool too. But the point being is that it's human to conduct commerce. It's human. And guess what? You can conduct commerce whatever way you want. So if you want to say, hey, let's put our money together, let's pull our money together and build this big old house for our family to live in. Do we see that? Do we see that happening in the United States? Do we see, quote unquote, immigrant families from all around the world come here and they do the same exact thing? That's a form of communal living. They take that money, invest it, buy homes, properties, figure out a way to create income and asset generation machines. Rinse, wash, repeat. They do it over and over again. We know that people silly enough to argue this stuff, right? We need to make money and lots of it. Not for chains, not for 5-star dinners. And don't get me wrong, I like to eat. I think y'all can tell I like to eat, right? Not just for materialistic things, but real things. Now, maybe I'm in the minority and maybe I'm the only one that's thinking like this, but goddamn it, all of us need to be thinking like this. And no, black people are not a monolith. No people are a monolith. But if we're talking about the survival of a people, Don't you think it makes sense that with the right people, because everybody can't work together, with the right people, you say, you know what, let's try something out. That takes capital, that takes time, that takes education. I mean, there's a lot of it. I wanted to show you one more thing, well, a couple more things, and then we can begin to get out of here. So there was I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, give me 1 second, y'all. Just want to share the screen real quick, and then I'll begin to close this out for the night. Now, again, as we talk about capitalism, I want to talk about this point. So this was a post I put up on Instagram and just let everybody know what we're doing tonight. And I need to blow this up a little bit larger. All right, so I can read this to you all. So here's a buddy of mine. Actually, we used to do a podcast together called Hip Hop Tuesdays. All right, so Preem 100X, actually, he's a rapper from a famous hip hop group in Philly called 100X. But he said, we never try capitalism as a community. That would mean we would be teaming up and pooling resources and investing our capital. I reject the communistic concept. Everybody don't deserve everything. You eat what you kill / grow. It's natural order. Y'all agree with that? Y'all disagree with that? What do you think? So I wanted to share that because, you know, there have been some people who have tried to do that. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, right? The Universal Negro Improvement Association. The Black Star Line. Did a lot of stuff. Until COINTELPRO came and lied on him and tarnished his name. Nobody talks about that, though. Right? Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam is right now the most successful Black organization to ever exist, at least in the United States. They pull money together. They work together. I know it has a religious angle to it. But there's examples all around us how this could be done. By the way, right, the first Black owner, the first commercial real estate landowner is from Philadelphia. I wanted to pull up this book. The UNI, Leon Sullivan, right, started the 1036 program. Todd, I see your comments. I'm coming to you. 1036 program, he was able to buy a piece of property in what's called North Philly today. Commercial property. It's a plaza. Still exists to this day. Still has helped to employ a lot of Black folks in the community ever since the 60s. I want to say it was either brought in 64 or 68. I think it's 68. Right, so we have examples of what has occurred, what happens when we do good work. Problem is we try to let everybody in. We try to go big. I've even learned that mistake. Can't go big. Go small. Start small. Find a few good committed people. Build from there. Right? But the point is you got to have the mindset. We all got to eat, y'all. As my man Preem said, if you don't work, you don't eat. Now, again, you can do capitalism and combine it with communism, right? Or with collectivism. If you got, what's a union, right? If you got 20 people working on the same job or something similar, and you say, you know what, one of my guys is out sick, and he always does good work, we gonna hold him down. That's natural. Now, yes, there's probably going to be some greedy asshole and say, I don't want to hold him down. But then that's where the culture of the collective comes into play. Say, this man has helped feed your family. This man has helped clothe your family. This man has helped me. This man has helped blah, blah, blah. This woman, right, can't leave the sisters out. This sister has done X, Y, Z. We going to hold her down. You can do whatever you want under capitalism. You can't do whatever you want under communism. If the state owns all the resources, how are you going to do anything? We got to go say, listen, we want some We want some seeds to plant on our farm to grow some food so we can eat. No, and I mean, this is what happens now. Oh, we're going to dole out the food as we see fit. Again, because some assholes in control, right? The problem isn't the ism, capitalism, socialism, communism. The problem is the people. As I said, my brother Corey over by the hood always says, people are going to people. And people are selfish. And people are assholes. And people are dickheads, right? But again, that's why culture is so important. Culture, how you do things. Again, I brought up earlier that black people aren't a monolith because everybody says that because they use it as an excuse to say, no, we can't work together. And I'm not here saying, let's be kumbaya and let's all 30, 40 million black folks in America just put their money together and work together. No, that's a logistics nightmare. However, we've seen other groups do something similar. Talk about the Jews, right? They buy from each other. They don't all like each other. The Zionists don't like what's the other group? There's several factions within the Jewish community. They don't all rock, but they have common interests, and they're all loyal to those common interests. And some folks, black folks, want to say, well, what interests are we loyal to besides ourselves? What's the thing that's bigger than ourselves? But again, there's a lot to that. There's a whole lot to that. All right. Hasidics, thank you, Todd. Right. And there's more groups than that, but they don't all rock. They are not a monolith. Can we stop saying that, please? Or at least don't use it as a ploy to say, you know what, we can't work together because we're not a monolith. When it's time to vote, I think I saw a stat, it's like 80 to 90% of Jewish people vote. Who do you think they are voting for? For the majority. A lot of them vote Democrat. Not many of them vote Republican, but I'll tell you what, they will play both sides of the aisle. And that's something to be thought of.
Never let the person that's knocking me down give me food, religion, or anything. I'm not listening to nothing you're saying because it's only to control me. I'm aware of that. I think we all are. Fear is implemented. It's a program to stop us from making our dreams come true. Most of the things we're scared of never happen until you think about it so much that you manifest it. When you're sitting around thinking about shit you're scared of, that means you're not doing nothing about it. Because when you're doing shit, you ain't thinking about the past, you're thinking about what's in front of you. So if you got time to reflect, that's too much time. You should be working. Too much time reflecting is sucker shit to me. That's licking your wounds. I'd rather fight.
So the question is, when are we going to start fighting and what are we going to start fighting for, right? The question I'll ask you is, who told you that capitalism isn't good? Who told you capitalism is good? Where did those thoughts originate from? Right, again, none of them are perfect. I will not sit here and say that it's all perfect. It is not. But what's the best for us? That's the question we got to be asking. All right, what's the best for us? And I will say this, I believe the best for us is capitalism. But at the end of the day, I don't care about the ism. Let's work. Let's eat. Let's build things. Let's invest in things. Here's the one thing we all could probably agree on if you really think about it. Dr. Amos has this quote where he says, no one can consume their way to wealth. No one can consume their way to power either. You have to be building. You have to be growing. You have to be investing. You have to be developing. You have to be doing something productive so you can have a platform to grow from. Again, we all need money, but again, if it's disintegrated amongst everybody and decentralized, like not focused at all, then no, it doesn't work. And sure, you can say that's collectivism. It is to a certain degree. If you really look at some of the richest people in the world, it came out of collectivism. Boards of directors are a great group of people who get together to further a corporation to make more money for shareholders. If that's not collectivism, I don't know what to tell you. Wealth is a team sport, y'all. Power is a team sport. So we always going to be powerless and poor, and let's keep doing the same thing we've been doing. But if we want to do something different, might have to think different and try a couple different things. All right, so I want to get back to some of these comments. I know I missed a lot of y'all. I appreciate y'all rocking with me for so long. What do y'all think about what I'm saying? Let me know. Capitalism or communism? Put it in chat. All right, I appreciate y'all being here. All right, Smoke still rocks. All right, Smoke what's up, brother? Appreciate you here every week. I'm here every week, 8:30. That's the new time every Wednesday. Northern Bell was popping. All right, now, yep, Empress is in the building. I haven't seen you in a while, so thank you for coming on. All right, the third position, Garveyism. I'm not sure where that came in, Trigger Happy. But what's up to you, Trigger Happy? Thank you for joining us. And Empress, I want to give you the horns too. Maddox 12, how are you? Welcome. All right, Lawrence Gonzalez says using capitalism is better than being broke, though. All right, Lawrence also says, by the way, welcome, Lawrence. But isn't he using the instruments of capitalism, and i.e. socialism and the tech? Yes. I wouldn't call it a hypocrisy, though. I wouldn't call it hypocrisy. But yes, he is. All right, cool. All right, Trigger Happy 262 says, I think this is why Garveyism is the way as opposed to capitalism or socialism. Garveyism roots our economic models and the African-centered position. Again, I really don't care about the ism, right? Yes, Black people should be thinking about Africa and African-centered things, in my opinion. Some of y'all may not like that. However, to me, it's all about getting back to the source. So if anything, like when you look at anything or do anything, to me, you should always be looking to get back to the source. And what's the source for Black folks? I know somebody's going to say, well, we built this country. We deserve to be here. Yes, we did. But we built the whole world, too. I know that might be a little too far out for some folks to get, but, Black folks have revolutionized, Black folks have, socialized Europe several times and Asia. So, I'm sorry, let me go back. All right, we hit that one. So, I think what's often the problem with Black capitalism today is the idea of undirected buying power or undirected wealth. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. I would say, though, that's more of a function of Americanism, right? So when you really, in my opinion, when you really think about it, we have always wanted to validate ourselves and show ourselves worthy to the quote unquote dominant society, and not say, you know what, I'm going to get back to the source and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. What's best for me, my family, my community, and my tribe. We've been tricked by nationalism a lot of times. And somebody said, how is nationalism a white supremacist concept? So when I get to that concept, when I get to that question, I'm come back to it. All right, now we're not rooting wealth into organizational structures yet. Listen, that allows to build many infrastructure projects on the way to seizing states and unions. Dr. Jared Ball needs to be in this combo. I like Dr. Jared Ball. I met him we don't fundamentally agree, but I like Dr. Jared Ball, a lot of stuff. And I do plan on reaching out to him at some point to have a conversation. We were both at the Black Blockchain Association conference over the summer down at Howard. He spoke, I spoke. He was fired down there though. he had some whole shenanigans going on down there. I don't know if anybody heard about it, but it was some stuff there. He was down there wrecking shop, and in my opinion, and rightfully so, and he was respectful with it as well. But we'll talk about it another time. All right, Trigger Happy says Garveyism was masterful because Garvey married to the business class, to the world, and to class, and allowed for wealth of the business class to be redistributed on an organizational level. All right, so here we go. Nationality is a white supremacist construct. Absolutely. Anybody ever heard of the Berlin Conference? Anybody ever heard of the Berlin Conference? So all of those European countries that sliced up Africa used their resources to then colonize other places where black people were or were transported to, and then change their names for their own benefit to do their bidding. I would say nationalism right now is a white supremacist construct. We didn't have nations the way we do now. Yes, they've been there, right? And I saw some comments about African people going back and forth. If you want to go back into the history of African people, and it's well documented, right? DNA, all of that. From where it stands right now, everybody was in the East, the Kenyas, the Sudans, the Ethiopias, and they moved west. You can look up the Bantu migrations. And so from there kind of populated the rest of the world. And even when you look at some of the folks in Africa, if you do some of the DNA, I haven't done mine yet, I plan on doing it, but they'll say you're part of a Bantu people. That's a lot of folks, right? So again, black folks, African people have always kind of mixed and mingled. And so when I say a nationalist, let me go back. When I say a white supremacist nationalist construct, is that like now we have the United States of America. But the United States of America, for all intents and purposes, is the enemy of black people. They still have not done right by black folks. I mean, they were given a half-ass apology. They have not atoned for their sins. There's been no reparations. And you're not going to hear me talk a whole lot about reparations, right? Because we don't have, in my opinion, we don't have the political power. We don't have the economic power to really push reparations. See, money comes into play for a lot of things outside of just balling, right? So, you know, there's a lot to that, in my opinion. But yes, so then when we pledge allegiance to this thing, this corporation, this construct, whatever you want to call it, that has not done right by black folks, whose team are we on? And that's not to say that America is the worst place in the world or the best place in the world or any of that. I'm agnostic to it all. I'm just looking at the facts. I'm happy that I was born here, but now the question becomes, all right, I'm born here. What else can I do for my family, for my community, for people all over, not just America? That's just how I view it. I know a lot of people don't view it because they feel that America is home base, and that's cool. I get it. That's what they can relate to. I get it. But even if you want to take that, you know, and just do it here, how are we doing that here? How are we solidifying? Because here's the thing. We're not going back to Africa. So how are we solidifying our power base in the United States? Tell me that. Somebody tell me that. Because it can't be what we've been doing the whole time. We have to do something different. So if you want me to say, I'm a proud American, when you going to do right by black folks? That's where I'm at with it. And guess what? I believe in politics. I believe in capitalism. I guess I'm complicated, right? But when you look at some of these things, some things, the math ain't mathing, y'all. All right, what black buying power myths? I'm sorry, y'all. What black buying power myths do is not tie wealth organizations. Instead, wealth is given to individuals who will not do nothing to substantial build programs and infrastructure for our communities. Yeah, but you have to have individuals to create groups, right? So the question isn't the problem with the individuals. The question to me is the culture. Why is the culture instilling to say, hey, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if we have any Divine Nine folks, any Masons, any OES. Look at where a lot of them spend their money. Any other nonprofits, any other black nonprofits, where do they spend their money? Now, I'm using this because I'm a staunch black business supporter. And no, we probably can't use them for everything, but damn it, I'm going to try to use black businesses first in everything I do. There are a lot of people in organizations saying, well, black businesses are just black businesses. They're like gum on a shoe. They're always thought of second. They're never thought of first. They're always thought of second a lot of times. So there have been times with me working with organizations saying, oh, we are a black organization. Why are we not spending our money with black people first? So if you don't have individuals that are coming to the table like that, it's hard to really separate the two, because it doesn't matter if it's a group, because they all think the same way. They're not thinking about black first. They're not thinking about how that black people, when they have businesses, tend to employ black people first. If you look at the stats, black unemployment has been double that for the most part since the days of Dr. Martin Luther King going to Washington, right? So if we know black-owned businesses employ black people the most, we know non-black businesses or PWI businesses tend not to. It's in our interest, like some people say it's racist, but it's in our interest to support black-owned businesses first. And no, you can't always do it, right? I might be out somewhere, I want to get a cup of coffee. I can't get to Uncle Bobby's. Uncle Bobby's is a black-owned bookstore in Philadelphia that sells coffee. Or I can't get to a Harriet's, right? Because all I got is all the other PWI coffee shops. So, but I try to make it my business to get to those, though. I try to make it my business to promote them. I try to make it my business to make people aware of them. So it's not, it's multiple layers, right? It's multiple layers. So I get you. And in theory, right? In theory, you're right. But what about, how do we get to that point? What's the application of it? What's the practicality of it? How do we do that? So Todd says Garveyism was really nothing special. Man, the largest black organization ever? Not special? Todd, help me out. Help me out. Help me out. Help me understand that. All right, Todd, the most successful, oh, damn. Trigger Happy kind of said the same thing. The most successful and revolutionary philosophy of the 20th century for African people, the most efficient, the most anti-capitalist. I wouldn't say they were most anti-capitalist, though. We got to get out of this anti-capitalism thing, in my opinion. Just mean we want to control our shit. That's all. Not a bad word. We let misguided people tell you what it is. Most people can't even define capitalism. And to be fair, most people can't define communism either, to be fair. I'd say it's pretty special. Yeah, it was definitely special. Listen, without Garvey, there's no Nation of Islam, all right? Without Garvey, there's no Elijah Muhammad. Without Garvey, there's no Malcolm X. Malcolm X's parents were Garveyites. It's clear. Right, so I know the nation gets all the props for helping Malcolm to resurrect, but he didn't resurrect so hard in the way he did if it wasn't for the foundation that his parents laid with Garveyism, because that was reactivated because it was laying dormant while he was Malcolm Little running around in Detroit, Boston, and New York. Delta Lucy, how are you? Welcome. Yes, hello. All right, so Todd, all right, I can't get through all of them. I want to, but I'm going to try to hit some of the main ones. So Todd says it was essential black capitalism had nothing much different than the same thing that was already espoused in the States before Booker T. I would differ. Now, Marcus, it's clear. The history is clear. Marcus was a fan of Booker T. And Booker T. Washington was the man. But I would think Marcus Messiah Garvey was a bit more militant in that way, where Booker T was not feared in the same way. I mean, you could see some of the critiques on the Atlantic Compromise, which is something I need to go back and look at again, on the whole debacle with him and Du Bois and all of that. I don't know if I would say he was as radical or as stern. All right, very informative. All right, cool. All right, I'm going to skip over those. Y'all can get y'all Garvey versus non-Garvey. Let me see. All right, I want to read this one. Garvey is married to business class with the working essentially was running horizontally. I'll say this. I think Garvey probably tried to expand too fast though. And he needed more time to build protection around the organization overall. And that's a guess, right? I can't say that for certain because, again, COINTELPRO infiltrated all Black organizations. All right. Is Lenin a capitalist? Is China capitalist? I would say no to both. I would say China is capitalist-esque now. Got a stock market, trading around the world. Definitely putting their stamp on the ground and saying we are world power now. We are here to be seen and heard. We will never be taken over again before. We'll never see the likes of an opioid addiction again. They're here to do their thing. I agree with that, Todd. I agree with that. All right, Empress Signs says, plus Marcus Garvey before social. Oh, God. See, I don't want to talk about the Boule because most people don't even know anybody in the Boule or know anything about it. It's all from stuff they've seen on the internet somewhere. I actually know people in the Boule, but that's neither here nor there. Yes, NAACP founding Jew merchants were American capitalism, though, and through and through. He wanted international trade. He did. But let's be clear. The relationship between Blacks and Jews is very nuanced. Very nuanced. All right, y'all go back and forth with this. The head of every communist nations are. Yeah, I would agree with that, Empress. The head of every communist nations are capitalists, capitalizing greatly on the backs of their peasant class who remain expendable and now profitable with their organs are harvested. Wake up, cheap wine. Let's not call no names. We don't call names. I'm not down with calling names. Listen, this is a Black show. And one of the things I would love Black people to really get through their heads, the biggest asset we have is each other. And the best way to harness that is with loving one another. You can't love people if you call them names all the time. I don't care how frustrated you are. And yeah, we all human, but I see folks online like crapping on people. That's why I was actually really appreciative of Sonny Michel's exchange, right? Nobody disrespected me. Nobody called me a name. How are we going to say we about elevation and we can't even be civil and have a conversation? Come on, folks. Right? I mean, when we really think about this, that's what the other folks do to us. And we do it to ourselves. So at the end of the day, we should be saying, yo, that's a brother, that's a sister. Or you might not be there. You might say, all right, at least this person is a human being and they deserve to be treated as such. I don't think that's that hard, folks. And listen, I get frustrated all the time. And I might cuss. I'm not going to cuss at you, though. I'm not going to call you a name. A capitalist would never advocate on an international level for the Black working class. The goal of a capitalist is to enrich himself and trample on the working class. That's not necessarily true either. See, we got to get out of these solidified hardcore things. A lot of things are fluid. When you look at a Ben and Jerry's, right? This is a business example. They were staunch capitalists. They give away a lot of their profits. You think that was a gimmick? I don't. And yeah, they wound up selling out because they couldn't run it anymore. But again, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Jim Jones' based quote was collectivism. The utopia delivered by empirical overlords is never a win-win for peons. Yes, thank you, Maddox. Please hit the like button, y'all. Listen, I'm fighting the algorithm, y'all. I just hit 7,000. Next goal, 10,000. We got to start showing that we can love each other. We can do business with one another. We can do politics with one another. The planet is the same, right? The same shit happens over and over again. Divide and conquer on every level. Every level. And we fall for it. When we going to stop falling for it? Yes, we need the support. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so I think it was only Todd and Trigger Happy in the comments. All right, Emperor says, God bless you, Kamari. Conversation and debate is as important as capitalism. Absolutely. Communism and centrism are inextricably linked. But guess what? All right, see, this is why I practice being objective. Capitalism has censorship too. We just don't realize it. It's just not as overt. But everybody doesn't necessarily get a platform to say whatever they want. And it's not quote unquote censorship, right? But voices get canceled and muted, not use canceled, because that's a whole other thing. All right, Trigger Happy says, yeah, I think an anti-capitalist stance has to be rational. For Black people to be free, we have to fund our course to freedom. So how are we funding it if we're thinking everything is supposed to be given? See, communism, in my opinion, builds entitlement. Entitlement never builds anything great. And we can see that by the bratty ass kids of millionaires and billionaires. They're usually not the ones that take the family empire to the next level. They're just not, because they don't have the chutzpah. They don't have the cojones. They don't have the testicular fortitude to build things and go forward. So I think that's rough. Yes, war is expensive. You cannot have a revolution without revenue, folks. You know what, Todd? You are correct. I said Irish. It was Polish. So Haiti had Polish soldiers supporting during their freedom fight. I confused them. I'm trying to figure out how to say the name, so sometimes I get stuck on the phonics, y'all, so forgive me. I believe he says, what up, TV? What up to you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, Empress says, so-called communist equality requires all but the heads to subtract. Never in the history of communism is there an empirical overlord and its henchmen to keep order. Oh, never is there? No. Right, I was about to say, yeah, what are you talking about? Right, you need an overlord, you need a henchman, or the person that does the body work, the bad work. What does free mean to you? Because in my eyes, the white man John Brown's vision was hell of a lot more relevant than Garveyism. Y'all going back and forth. Y'all getting busy. Now, Ty, what does this mean? Shout out to Jesse. I can't get David Chappelle out of my head. Juicy Smollett. All right, I thought y'all might have had some comments, some thoughts. You know what, Trigger Happy? I kind of touched on that, but I didn't say it that way, and you are correct. To play devil's advocate, Cuba is sanctioned heavily by America, justifiably so. It was the same thing with Zimbabwe, yes. With Mugabe, heavy sanctions from when he kicked the Europeans out. All right, all right, y'all gotta, what doc y'all sharing? I can't find it. Do me a favor, if y'all still on, what y'all talking about? What documentary were y'all talking about? Oh, Money Masters of the Central Bank. It's from the 90s. Okay. Don DeMarco. I caught that. I saw that when you said it. Yep. Now, what is this trigger happy word? I saw you say it a couple times, Todd. Black Americans as an ethnicity are more than simple Africans in America. We are indeed a mixed folks, a tribe of people who ethnically who was created in America. Well, no, we weren't created in America. You could say we were formally mixed, but listen, it's in our DNA, in my opinion, right? We go to black church. Black church is not the same as white church. That's not made in America. That's from the motherland, right? We do a lot of things the same. And I'm not necessarily trying to go down a path of African Americans versus continental Africans. I'm not trying to do that, but there's a reason why black folk stuff is different. It's not because of America. Black conservatives believe that prosperity can come from the traditional white values of American and European. I agree with that. Even our American heritage is a mixture of right. That's why I brought up the Bantu migrations earlier. All right. So trigger happy, this is basically how I feel. So Todd, he says I disagree. Unless you want to claim white admixture, you are predominantly African, making you African. And Native Americans is very minimal to the point of it being non-existent for some. Yeah. So, all right. Any other questions, comments, concerns before I go? Afro-Mexicans have more admixture of Native American than African Americans. Most people in the diaspora are not Native American, including those Afro-Mexicans. Y'all going deep. Y'all going deep. What is this trigger? What happy word? And with the preacher, I'm getting ready to close. Yes, sir. All right. So he says, all right. So Todd, I was looking for this. Todd says, I would disagree. We did do it before Garvey. There was Booker T. Yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't the same, right? Nor was Booker T's the same, right? Yes. Booker T did advocate for us dominating industry, right? So did Du Bois to a certain degree. But yes, Booker T did argue for that. But he wasn't necessarily looking to create actual business, right? Tuskegee was great. Hampton was great. A lot of great things came out of them. But I would say they were different. Yes, the FOI has had farms for quite some time. All right, so Todd, I know what you're talking about, right? So I said the Nation of Islam is the most successful organization the black community has ever seen. Todd said the black churches. Here's the difference. I've had this debate with a pastor before. Mad when I say that. Why? Because y'all get caught up in the whole religiosity of the thing. I can't really care about the religious angle of it, right? Black churches are not together. You have Baptists, you have evangelical, you have Kojic, you have just different factions of the black church, right? The Nation of Islam is the Nation of Islam. When they move, when they do something, they do it as one. Black church, not so much. Yeah, they have some things, right? And listen, I don't rag on the black church. I think the black community rags on the black church way too much. Maybe I should do that as a talk one day. But I think we rag on them way too much because there was a lot of positive movements, all positive black movements just about came out of the black church. And I think many of us look over it and we don't look at the nuance of it, and they don't want to be objective about a thing. So you control the state. Yes, Hasidic Jews were another faction of Jews I couldn't think of earlier. Thank you for that assist. All right, so Todd said this was an unfair comparison when I said, I think I was saying that the Jews took over Palestine. I know it has something to do with the Jewish community. I don't remember as much exactly the point I was trying to make. Not much difference between fear and faith. Both are evidence of things unseen. Sometimes fear does have evidence, though, right? Somebody putting a gun in your face, that's evidence. Somebody whipping on you, that's evidence. Somebody robbing you, that's evidence. So I disagree, Todd. I disagree. How are we any different than Europeanized folks if all we want to think about is, and listen, I'm not talking about current day. I'm just talking about and what it would be had we not been kidnapped, stolen, and prisoners of war. What should we cling to? So, okay, I'd rather be world-centered. I got you. I do believe Black folks should be working towards being global citizens, though. So I think we probably agree on that point, right? Because the economy is global now. Money's global. Politics is global. If we are only just focused on the nation, the neighborhood we're in, we're missing out, one, on a lot of opportunities and a lot of other things that we could take advantage of. Maddox says, I didn't know you were in the, well, I'm not technically in the Black Blockchain Association. I was asked to come talk, and I did. So, bro, as far as nationality is concerned, both in Africa and the American continent, there were nations, but not in the same way. And even nationality, even in the continent now, is a problem. It's totally a problem. So what I'm saying now is not that it's perfect. So we jumping from Navajo Nation in the United States and the Iroquois, the Kingdom and Ghana. Yeah, the boundaries were not the same. They were not the same. You had a lot of intermarriages going on over there. I'm not as sure about indigenous people in the United States. I haven't studied that as much. Nation, city, states. Yes, they were, but I'm saying they're not the same. They're not the same. All right, Thunder's got a question. Okay, Thunder. Well, one, welcome. Hopefully you're still here. You said, why can't it be both like China? What's both? You talking about Black folks practicing capitalism, communism? Well, I said Black folks within capitalism, Black folks can practice collectivism. I don't want to use the word communism because it's more of a governmental type thing, but Black folks can be very kind, charitable, and giving under capitalism. They can do whatever they want. Actually, again, the majority of people who make money are doing it in groups, collectively. They're buying property collectively. What do you think a corporation is? Like, we get caught so much sometimes into these words, and listen, words are important, but the function to me is more important than the word. Sumerians, Babylon, yes. Again, I said they are not, it's not the same. And they were all nation states for the most part. And it's still with the way it's being practiced right now, it's still a form of white supremacy. It's still a tool of white supremacy. Yes, all of those things did exist in the past. Kemet to Babylon is all of that, but it's still a form of white supremacy now, and how it's being practiced. Black folks in Philadelphia, Black folk, there's certain Black folks, not all Black folks, right? In certain sections of Philadelphia, Black folks or Africans in America, Black folks born in America, had problems with Liberians that come here. Why? Stupid. We have the same problems. All right, Thunder Q word, and not just saying of both, but some of any of that works for the situation at time. I would agree. So an anti-capitalist business is usually portrayed as a component of the white supremacists. I'm not totally understanding you here, Todd. So an anti-capitalist business is usually portrayed as a component. Yeah, okay, yes. I agree with that, Todd. I agree. We look at any money-making function as being white supremacist, which is sad. I buy my laundry detergent and trash bags from a black-owned company. Dope. JT Coins coming into with the $1.99 chat. Welcome, 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 sir. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right, Todd says bingo. Garvey was not the first Garvey. I think we're being semantical now, Todd. Militant, bro, I remember Garvey was running around here and acting like he was about it. But he was here during Tulsa and ain't do nothing but write a letter. He wasn't militant. When did Garvey come to the States? I'm Googling this now, y'all, right? Garvey was only here for a couple of years, I believe, in like 1915-ish. Tulsa was already underway. Right, so I'm not saying militant in the term where he was trying to burn something down. You don't like Garvey, I take it. Okay, here it says, I'm not going to put it on the screen, but y'all just got to believe me. When did Marcus Garvey come to the U.S.? 1916. Tulsa had started Greenwood section in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I want to say they started late 1800s or late 1900s. The massacre occurred in 21. The massacre was in 21, May 31st, 1921. Man, Rosewood happened in 1923. Jeez. So the question is, when did blacks start migrating to Tulsa, Oklahoma? So the arrival of African Americans in the Tulsa area coincided with the Indian removal of the 1830s. So that's not really fair, Todd, in my opinion. That's not fair. All right, JT Coin says Booker T definitely influenced Garvey. Yes, he did. It would have been epic if they could have met and worked together. I think, he passed away before Garvey got there, right? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Todd. You said JT Coins noticed you never heard of Booker T. as on Washington. I wonder why. I get why. Trigger happy, I get that, and most of our folks are definitely operating under a different meaning of capitalism, right? And I'm saying let's get to the source. Let's get to what it really means, right? People owning and controlling their own shit without having a whole bunch of government interference. That's what it is. Because what happens is, in my opinion, people confuse capitalism and imperialism and think it's the same thing, and it's not. It's not. All right, Todd says in real time, anyone can observe the sanctions going on in the world to witness the censorship of capital. Yes. Yeah. I would disagree with that, but okay. I recently read a book by Dr. Tyron Wright about Booker T. Washington, Booker T. and Africa, the making of a Pan-Africanist. Oh, I need to look that up. Let me write that down because I lose these comments. making of a Pan-Africanist. Tyrene, right? Sounds interesting. Yes, Martin Delaney is, I believe, on record as being the first Pan-Africanist. That is correct. Nation of Islam is not much compared to the AME Church. Todd wants to fight. I would disagree, brother. I can't think of anything. And listen, AME started in Philadelphia. Came out of the white church. Started because they got kicked out. I believe it was Absalom Jones. I got to go back and check the history on this. And I think it was, they went to their own thing. And yes, the AME does get busy. So no shade. All right. It was a great read. I had a chance to interview the author. She read all of Booker T notes, over 4,000 pages. Wow. I got to check that out. All right. What else to think too? The black church ain't the same as before. The black church housed many African spiritual. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Todd says we aren't, and we were mostly sold. Not kidding. No, we were definitely kidnapped, brother. I know where you're going to go. You're going to say Africans did it to Africans, and again, it's nuanced. I would challenge you to go check out Dr. Malefe Asante's conversation of that, because there were a lot of Jewish people who went to work with the Nazis, but nobody here is saying, in the world, speaking generally, that that Jews sold out. I'm tired, y'all. Nobody here is saying that Jews sold out Jews to Nazis. It just doesn't happen. We got to watch the rhetoric, y'all. Got to watch the rhetoric. No, they were not the same as they are now. Totally different. What do you think a corporation is exactly? Each Forget Virginia was formed by Virginia Joint Stock Corporation. Yeah. 1915. Got you. Google it, please, sir. And Google his letter to Tulsa is too. What am I Googling? I kind of agree with you. I'm just saying that I didn't agree with the, I think it's unfair that you're saying Garvey wasn't really about that life. That's all I'm saying. Garvey wasn't here to really partake in Tulsa. I'm cool with Garvey, but now, I'm not worshiping Garvey. But listen, we gonna give these ancestors their props. I give Booker T his props. I give Du Bois his props. I give Martin Luther King his props. Elijah Muhammad, Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, like all of them. So it's not worship. Why can't we big up black folks though? We should be bigging up black folks. We big up George Washington as one of the quote goddamn founding fathers, and he owned enslaved people, raped enslaved people, and like we think he's something to be revered. No, government does undergird capitalism. Politics is in everything. That's something else. Black folks have been talking about that a lot. Politics is in everything. You know what? You make a good point. I used to use Goodreads a lot. I don't do it as well. Malefe's work. Okay. I would say Malefe's work is primary source because he's going to the continent and having conversations with the people he most can do it with. Yes. And even when you go back and read some of the slave tales and some of the journals of folks, it confirms a lot of the same things, bro. Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and as you should, Shout out to your great-great-grandfather. Nothing wrong with that. We should salute all our ancestors. All right, last one. Read the book, Fighting for Slavery. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, though. We don't talk. There is no talk. There's not a lot of talk. When I say talk, talking mainstream. There was revolt and fight back from African clans and tribes against the Europeans. They were not all involved. Some of them were, yes, but not all of them. And remember, again, they were already in the slave trade, right? But just in a different fashion. Folks weren't being sold to come across the Atlantic to never be seen again. Slavery was done much differently. So when we say it's the same, again, that's a little intellectually dishonest to say it was the same. It was not the same. And when people say, you know, slaves never fought back, that's a lie. It's a bunch of slave revolts. Again, we don't talk about it. We don't go deep into our history. And again, like, you know, Todd, I feel you know, a lot of this is what your worldview is and what you self-select. I get that. And I respect that. You know, I totally respect that. But within this construct, we have to say, you know what? As Malcolm said, leave your religion at home. What's our common interest? How can we work together? How can we do better together? Is it something I can help you with, Todd? Right? Is it something I can help Trigger happy with? You know, I'm all for that. And I think at the end of the day, that's the crux of it all. That's the glue. How do we get more Black love? Is it ideological? Yeah, I can admit that. But you need, ideological is not the right word. Idealistic is the word I was looking for, y'all. Is it idealistic? Yes. But we got to have a little bit of hope, a little bit of dreams to go for some things we've never seen before. As Einstein used to say, the same thinking that got you into a thing can't be the same thinking that's going to get you out. So, you know, we got to want to try some things and go to different places. So I appreciate y'all. Man, we rocked for 2 hours tonight. Didn't mean to go this long. It's tax season for me. I got stuff to do. Make sure y'all get y'all taxes filed on time. Again, you're watching the Finance Rebel Show. I'm Kamari Ellis, the Finance Rebel, every week, every Wednesday, 8:30, tax season time. We are here broadcasting, usually about a topic. I'm supposed to be answering y'all money questions too. This Wealthy Wednesday started to help people with any money problems they were having that they had questions with and didn't know to turn to. But we'll definitely get back to that next week as well. Actually, I got to check because one of these weeks I'm going to have to take off or rearrange some things, but I will let you know way in advance. Again, appreciate you all. Y'all stay great. Y'all keep doing great things. And I'll be back next week. Y'all be good.